I love the intro. Maybe it's too soon that we played it. Waiting for people to join. Oh, that. Okay. So, hello, everybody, Monday Talkers. Okay, this time I will not start with the cliche that I have because I started to have loyal attendees, and thank you very much for being with me every session. Okay, let me say I'm very inspired by someone called Les Brown. Most of you know who's this guy. He's very inspiring. When I feel down, I need charging, I just listen to his YouTube. And he's always saying, you gotta be hungry. So the reason I started to do this, though I still keep my video in the LinkedIn profile, I did it like for maybe 8 to 9 times to make it final and put it on my profile. I never knew that I will be a camera friendly, just like to go live. But it is what it is. I discovered this, and the reason is that after a while of interviewing people, I started to learn their experience, their knowledge, sharing, and their welcoming to share this with the world. Give me some, not only the experience, they give me the words. Whenever I speak in any diverse subject, I have something to say. At least I can say, yes, I know Norman. He's a good friend of mine, and he told me this about finance. So it's really amazing to get inspired. Like one of my guests was also Michelle, Goldsmith. He says, stop saying I will be happy when. Be happy now. And that's a message that could be suitable for even small kids and big CEOs in the world. So I get inspired really by every story I share, and that's why I decided to go live with Monday Talks and love your audience, love you to be there with me every time. And today I will just like planning or working on to be a storyteller. I'm a background engineering for like 20 years, but I love stories and I love sharing this knowledge with the world. My plan is to leave an impact to the world. So if you love my show, just subscribe to Monday Talks on YouTube and keep watching me every Wednesday. I try to be consistent every Wednesday on LinkedIn. So today I have a wonderful guest, and he is a friend of mine. He was also one of my guests, my special ones, on Monday Talks earlier. And he's the finance expert. When I say finance, the first thing that comes to my mind is Norman. So, hi again, Norman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. It's great to be back. Really great to be back. I'm excited.
Amazing. So today we are thrilled that we have Norman with us, and we will share the insights to about this very spread common term that is called financial freedom. It's consumed word, but it's worth touching. It's worth talking about it. And are you eligible for it? Should you plan for it? And many questions. So please, whatever you have, any question in back of your mind, do not hesitate to put it here in the comments because we love to enrich this conversation. We love to hear from you. So this is two-way session. It's not we only just play from our side and wait for it's not a lecture. Okay? So whenever you have a question, just say, no need to raise a hand, by the way. Thank you. And today, let's the main questions or the points that we can cover. Just to let you know, heads up, to get you more excited. What's the definition of financial freedom? How important is that? Uh, Practical strategies of budgeting and saving, effective investment approaches, and overcoming the financial setbacks. Everybody of us, like especially in Corona, has a very strong, harsh setback of finance. And some people just like, I don't know how to save money. I don't know how to plan my finance. I just go to work 8 to 6, and goodbye. Get the salary, paycheck. Okay, let's start by the very beginning and ask you my regular question. Who is Norman?
Oh, who is Norman? That's a big one, isn't it?
And I
Norman,
love, by the way, your pitch every time you do it. Please do it.
my pitch. Which one is that? I've got dozens of pitches ready to go.
The one you use with the online network.
Oh yes, that's right. That's actually a very good one because that's
It
SPC.
is.
And, 30 seconds to a minute on who you are without
Yeah.
talking about work, and then about a minute on actual work. Yeah, I'll do that. Why not? That's a good one. Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
I'm Norman Lowe. I am a Brit based in Dubai, where I have been for 24 years. So obviously I'm 30 years of age, same age as Daniel. Wink, wink. And yep, I'm married. I've got 2 children. And in terms of what I like to do, what does Norman do as hobbies, interests, things like that? Obviously, I love to travel, to go around. I particularly love, since meeting my wife, to go camping when we go to South Africa because she's from there originally. But I'm actually quite a big nerd at heart. I love science fiction and things like that. TV shows, books, and I'm a tabletop role player as well, which not a lot of people know about. It's kind of like board gaming times 10. Kind of like that. That's kind of what it is, yeah. With a bit of creative. It's called role playing. You assume the role of different characters in a game setting, effectively. So you do a little bit of. I wouldn't call it quite acting because we're not actors, but you take on the kind of mindset of a character and you play that character. If anyone's ever done any murder mystery dinner parties, things like that, it's kind of in that kind of framework, and that's what I love because I love creativity. I love the escapism of it all, getting to put yourself in other people's shoes, and most of all, it's around a table. So you've got people, and I love people. I love being around people. It's always interesting, particularly in Dubai because we've got so many different nationalities here, so many different walks of life. So even with my regular gaming group, I think there's 4 nationalities. It's just very different. So you get all those experiences and ideas. But that's Norman, the person. Now let's talk about Norman, the business, I suppose. So I'm an investment advisor, and I've been doing this since 2005. I started here in Dubai. I hold Chartered Institute qualifications from the UK. I work for a company called SVN, and we're a very, very I'd say progressive pioneering firm. We do a lot of things very differently. They invest a lot into people as well, which is wonderful. It's good to be part of an organization that does that. And essentially what I try to do is work with people of all different walks of life, different parts of the world, different experiences, to help them to protect their money and to grow their money. It's very simple, to hit those goals in life. And everyone is different. No one person is the same as another. Some people are just starting a journey, others are in a different level of their journey, so they need very different advice. And that's really me in a nutshell, I suppose.
Beautiful. Okay, let's start to hit it hard. Like, let's define what financial freedom is, and is it limited by time, or just like I can be free for a year, like I can travel the world and then back to back to miserable 9 to 6, or can I have it for lifetime? And
well, actually,
what does it mean first?
Yeah, well, start with but that's a good point you raise, because you can be financially free for just a time as well, depending on what you're doing in life. But financial freedom, I mean, how would we put this really simply? I mean, all it is where you're not dependent on a job to meet your basic needs, or on an exterior. You know, I don't know whether you put a business or somebody has to give you money every month, you know, or whatever it is. You've got your own way of bringing in some sort of income on a regular basis. It's reliable enough that you don't need to work. You can work, but you don't need to. It's very similar to retirement, but it's also not retirement, because retirement tends to mean, you know, I'm getting old now and I want to stop working. And so that's a bit different. We touched on a really good point, which is, could you be financially free for a year? You could plan that, absolutely. Some people I've met in the past have said that they want to go back and study, for example, full time in, say, 5 years. And can we just make a plan so that there's money aside for that, so that for those 2 years, 3 years, I'm going to be studying. I don't have to have an income. I don't need to work. I've got, you know, investments paying me money instead. So it can just be short term. But I think for most of us, when we think of financial freedom, we're thinking about hitting a point where We're working because we want to, not because we have to.
Okay. So, is it I know every employee or at least they have a look for the future, and they'll say, okay, social security, retirement plan, all that stuff, just like to be decent.
Yeah.
But how can we calculate that? I just like don't have to just live by the minimal of what I can get from social security. Rather, I can get same income. I just reach the at the top of my career life. How can we, like, if I reach a certain amount, just being paid every month, how can I get there, this number, to be really a steady income for me for lifetime after I just like tried to quit my job?
Yeah. It's I mean, there are different ways of working it out, but the most simple way of working it out is to assume that whatever income you want. So let's just, for argument's sake, say that I want to have $50,000 or $100,000 every year for life. That's me financially free. So how do I generate that? Where's that coming from? And what numbers do I need to generate that? Because before you look at what you're actually doing to get that, you might be buying properties or investing in businesses or having profits from your shares or businesses or whatever. You need to actually find out, well, how much do I need to generate that kind of income? And typically what we would do is we would say, you want a very conservative inflow of money coming in, because you don't want to rely on needing high profits every year, because markets go up and down. Even the best investments can go down for a while. So you want a very low average, and that's what you base your number on. The easiest way to do it is to take the annual income you want and times it by 20. That will give you a number that will, if you had 5% every year coming off of that number, whatever that number is, a property, a portfolio, whatever, that would give you the income. Very, very general, very simple, but that's the kind of the initial target. And that's what I use with clients a lot. I tell them that we do this and that's what you need. So if it's 100,000, you might need 2 million. And then that 2 million pays you the profit. And then you start worrying about, well, how do we get the 2 million and how do we actually generate from the 2 million to get that money? That's a whole nother step. But the first thing is to get a target.
Okay. Let's slow down and talk to a language that we understand. I'm an engineer, but I got lost here.
Yeah. Even I get lost, don't worry, sometimes. Yeah.
Because I know I have to invest something, but come on, what 2 million? What 20 million? What kind of practical action should I do now? Is it too late? Or okay, one at a time. Okay. What are the for the current market situation now? What is the best way to invest money, and how much should I cut out as a percentage of my payroll to invest in there to at least reach that number that I'm looking for on the long term?
It all depends on what the number is and what your income is, because they can be very disparate things. If somebody's 25-year-old just got their first job and they're earning $2,000 a month, and they want to retire on 3 million a year, there's quite a gap that they have to try and cross over, quite an unrealistic gap sometimes. But then they've also got the advantage of a long time to get there.
Is there a rule of thumb, like I can use, okay, I'm 48. How much should I invest to get $2,000 a month? Is there a rule of thumb?
You can work that out quite easily. If you times the 2,000 by 12 and then times that by 20, and that gives you the figure you need. And then you just have to say, well, if I want that when I'm 60 or 65, you can even break that down as a cash savings every month. Or you can say, well, okay, I'm going to invest some of that so I don't have to invest as much cash. It's not as number intensive as it sounds, but if you've never done that exercise before, it can be a little bit surprising and sometimes quite frightening as well. Because if you say, I want to be financially free when I'm 60, when I'm 40, whatever, and that's 10 or 15 years away, and then suddenly you're presented with a number that's 7 digits in order to do that. Some people would that makes you step back and say, hold on, how am I going to do that? I only earn this much a month. How am I? And that's why it's important to break down your income and expenditure. I think if I was to roll this back a bit, I would say that it's very important to think of yourself a bit like a business. In any good business, what's coming in, what's going out, at least broadly. In a very good business, you've got detailed accounts, and people should be doing that as well. You don't have to have a spreadsheet. You don't have to be, doing proper accounts, but there are so many free apps online. There are some even that tie to your bank account and your cards, and so you can see over 6 months, I spend this much on vacations. I spend this much on buying books or going to shows or whatever it is I'm doing. And that starts to give you an idea of where your options lie, because it may be that you have enough money, but you need to maybe cut back on a few things.
But here's the difficult question. Like, especially if I live in Dubai or anywhere on the world, I resize my expenses depends on what I get at the end of the month, right? If my salary was good, I just go have comfy life and change my house, change the furniture. It's easy to get there. It's very easy. It's tempting, but there is a theory behind that. I live my life once, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
These days, just passing by. I mean, if I just want to save now, and after 60 I get sick in bed and I have millions, what should I do with that?
Yeah, then it's not so good to you. Yeah, I mean that's a valid way of looking at it. In fact, I mean, if you see online and in some books they talk about, if you just stop buying a latte every day or a coffee, you would have all these thousands of dollars at the end of the year. And that's quite true. You'd have some extra money at the end of the year. But if it's something as simple as that gives you a bit of pleasure, yes, you'll have a few $1,000s extra at the end of the year to save and invest. But most people, number one, they won't invest and save that. They'll just spend it elsewhere. And number two, you become miserable because you're not having a coffee every day as well. So you're not advancing your life in any way anyway. So what's the point? You have to look at it a bit more holistically and look at the whole thing. Ultimately, I mean, really, a lot of financial freedom planning comes down to how badly you want it. That's the first thing, because if you really want it, then you'll suffer a lot now. But that can be quite extreme, and I don't think most of us want to do that or would prefer to do that. But there's also a lot of stuff that especially if you're paid quite well, sometimes we spend more than perhaps we need to.
Okay,
and we can look at kind of tweaking things a bit around and stuff. And I mean, even if you look at very wealthy people, most of them save money. They on a regular basis. It's not an optional thing. It's like, I'm going to put 5% of my income into an account. When that account gets bigger, I'm going to go and buy another property or whatever it is they're going to do. They all do it. Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't hurt to do that as well.
They're paid like hundreds of thousands in every month from their business. So it doesn't bother them to put a couple of hundreds in the investment, right?
Yeah.
So they have this. I mean, my question is, does that freedom, financial freedom, is only applies for dedicated people or some selected segment that they should at least be? There is a certain number that they should have in their bank account every month, or is it something like can be generated for even low-paid people?
I mean, if honestly, I'd say almost anyone at any income bracket. Obviously, there are many exceptions to that. It depends where you live in the world and what your income is and the cost of living. But I think if you look at over sort of 10, 15, 20 years, even someone on a pretty low income, maybe their job's not so great or they've just been unlucky, it's very hard not to say, well, I've saved a little bit. I've in the past I've had clients that have saved what most people as expats would think is almost not worth saving, like 1,000 dirhams a month and things like that, because for them that was a big chunk of their income. Not a big chunk of the income, but rather it's as a percentage, it might be 10% of what they earn or something, or 5% or whatever. So they're still doing the exercise, but they're doing it at a much smaller level. But in 5 years' time, they would have a pot of money. I'm looking at the questions coming up here. So
There's a comment from Raisa Ali. She's a regular with me. She was commenting, "You're talking too fast."
Okay, I'll try to slow down. I will try to slow down. I apologize. Sometimes I do speak quickly. So I mean, as I was saying, I think regardless of your income level, once you've reached the point of being able to survive and live normally, modest lifestyle, you could say, I'm going to put 5% away, I'm going to put 6%, 10%, whatever. It doesn't have to be a large amount, but you could do that. And if you read my blog in the past, I used to find examples of people who were very low incomes. There was one who was a petrol station, a gas station attendant in America years and years ago. And he retired a millionaire. It was an extreme example, perhaps, because he would go and buy shares every month, and he lived in a wooden house where he just smoked his pipe and that's it. And he didn't spend it and use it. But there's no reason why most of us can't get ahead over a 5 or 10 year period if we want to save regularly and do that. And then it's just a case of, how do we do that? What's the best method for me? Is it going to be, I put it into a bank account? Do I buy shares? Do I do this? But that's depends on the individual and how they do it.
Let's give the people just a practical example. Just this guy of being a petrol station attendant. How much is he paid? Like $500.
Yeah.
5% out of the 500 is nothing. I mean, where should he put it to make something? Like, what can I do with it?
He was relying on the same method that Warren Buffett uses, actually, which is long-term investing. It's something that a lot of people don't do, especially expats. We like to get our money quickly. We want income. And he was buying big name shares of companies that were solid, and he was just holding them. He wasn't selling them. He wasn't trading them. Whenever he received profits from the shares, because if you own a share, some companies give a profit share every year, he would use that and buy a little bit more, and he just held it. He didn't do anything with it. And you imagine over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of working, you could get quite a substantial amount of money from that. Even today, so it's possible to do. It just depends what your discipline. It becomes a habit, and I mean, there's lots of books about habits, and if you make it a habit, it will become part of your identity and who you are, and you can still live your life and just carry on with it. You say, well, okay, every month I put away. Once you're on a survival level and above income, and you're not going crazy with your money, then you just say, every month I save 5%. That's what I do. It's part of my DNA. And then I go and still enjoy life. And honestly, 5% for most people, you wouldn't miss that at all. Even 10% exactly. Probably. Yeah.
I agree with you. 5%. I'll put it away, but we're weak. I have to spend it away. Send it somewhere.
Yeah.
Buying shares is a wonderful thing, but maybe in the international world, because we don't have here local companies that like steadily keep growing. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not familiar. But what other ways, like strategies? Like I'm investing 5%, and it's becoming a nice habit. Just like you said, I love the idea, by the way, to make it a daily or part of your life. This is 5% I never see in my life. And yes, I can drop a 5%. Everybody can do it. But what sufficient ways to think now in the market now to spend this 5%? How can I just put it away and look at it after 20 years or 10 years?
There are so many options that we'd be here all day talking about what you can invest your money into. So I should begin by saying that. But if you were just saving cash, for example, and then over a few years, you'd build up a nice amount of cash, you could do what a lot of people do, which is invest in property, because people like tangible assets. They like to have something they can touch and feel. Maybe some people don't like stocks. You might invest into a business directly as a private shareholder, or you may start your own business, save up and do it that way. There's so many ways to do it, and part of my job is first to identify the goal and the number and all of that, and then comes the actual real work, which is, okay, where are we going to put this? Because some people will, and myself included, if you put it somewhere that's easy to get, then the temptation is there to spend.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And other people are wonderful. They're really disciplined. They're like soldiers. They could have it in front of them on their table and they wouldn't touch it. And
And
so
this is
you have
not
to,
common,
you have
by
to
the
work
way.
with it.
This
Yeah.
is not the common.
It's not common, but there are people like that. There's more than you think, actually. And often I call those people the quiet wealth, the wealth you don't see. People who save regularly and invest regularly, but you don't see it being displayed. There's a lot of that in the world.
Let's take a practical story, and let's pretend Norman is the story, the hero of this story, or another guy, just like David or Edward. Okay, the income of this guy is $1,000. Let's build up a financial plan for him, and he is 42. What else do you
It's
have
42.
in mind?
Okay. Yeah, $1,000 is quite a low low income, but
Yeah.
I suppose it's possible. I think, I mean, to start with, whoever this guy is me, is you, whoever he is, we first have to find out what are his plans. And some people don't really even have plans. A lot of us don't. But at some point, especially when we get to our 40s and 50s, we should be thinking about, well, I can't do this forever. This is not possible to just carry on the way I'm going. So that spark is already there, that, okay, in 10 years' time, I'm going to give myself a goal that I will have saved. I'm going to develop a habit of saving and investing. Maybe I won't reach the target number. Maybe I need 2 million, but I get 500,000 after 10 years. Well, 500,000 of 2 million is better than zero of 2 million. It's a lot better. It gives you something to work with. So sometimes it's about small steps, breaking it down and seeing where the person wants to go, where the hero in the story wants to be. A lot will depend on his goals as well. Some people, they want to leave something to their family, for their children, for a charity. Some people just want to travel the world. That costs money as well. You need to budget for that. They might want to buy a log cabin by a river and fish every day, and they're happy. Everyone's different. Some people want a Rolls Royce. Some people want a private jet. And so you can budget, you can plan all these things out. Everyone's got their own goal. The goals are almost immaterial. It's because I have to put a number to those goals, then we work out how to get to those goals. So if someone's earning 1,000, we obviously can't tell them to save 20% of their salary, 30%, 50% if they've never saved before. That's never going to work. So you start small, you break it down, which is why normally I work long term with clients. If I take on a client now, I say that we're going to be meeting every 6 months at least, maybe every 3 months, because we've got a journey to go on, and I'm going to be with you on that journey. We need to make sure we get you there, or at least as close as possible.
It's very challenging, I know.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think about where your first step is. What's that saying that if you want to move a mountain, you start by moving the small stones.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's like that. I mean, for some people, they've got a lot of money behind them, and they can do it quite quickly. But others, they have to build up that money first. And so we have to look at, how do we save? What's the most comfortable way to do that? There are so many options available, so many products and vehicles for saving. Some people just put it in the bank and leave it there. Others will put it offshore in a platform or something, and then buy shares and things like that. And everyone's different. There's no one way to start. But if you ask, actually, the one way to start is you make a decision to start. That's the first step, because without that, there's no point in looking at anything. Otherwise, you're just shopping in the store, like, you're not buying anything. You're just looking around at different things, seeing what's available, which is nice. But if you're not picking up something and paying for it at the checkout, then you might be wasting your time if you keep doing that over and over, which a lot of us do.
Before I shoot my next questions, I need your help, audience. In these, what do you have in mind? Financials, numbers. Ask. We have the expert, and he's leaving in 30 minutes. So it's your field. Help me out here. Okay, my next question is there I know there is a preferred, as early as possible, as young as possible, financial plan would be easier. But is there, let's say, an age where we say, hey, you're too late now?
Oh, that's a good question. Too late's a difficult one. I mean, I suppose there's a cutoff point. A lot depends on your health when you get older, and your ability to work and make decisions. Because at some point, if you live long enough, those things become very hard to do. But by then, I think you wouldn't be working anyway, so you've already crossed the line. But for most people who are still working, it's not too late to start something, to do something, even if that's just start developing a habit to commit to saving something. Open a separate bank account from your main one, and put whatever you can in every month. Just say, I'm going to put 50 dirhams, dollars, whatever it is, something, and then try that for a few months and see what's there, and then keep going. And sometimes you might need coaching as well. Some people, I mean, a lot of us have got very different investment psychologies, and we've got very different relationships to money. And it's individual, it's family, it's culture. It's also when you were born, because the world's always changing. Somebody born in the 1920s and the Great Depression will have a very different view of money to somebody born 20 years ago. And because the way the markets work is different, and what they see as going up and going down is different. Their trust in the market's going to be different. Their trust in the government's going to be different. So there's all these factors you've got to come into play as well. So sometimes a bit of self-knowledge, bit of coaching, bit of reading, that helps as well. I can recommend some very good books on investment psychology, actually. Very simple, easy to read books, which helped me tremendously. Because sometimes you need that grounding before you start moving on to practical action. But for most of us, it's just make a decision. Say, okay, I'm going to at least save some money in a bank account every month. Or, you know what, I'm going to start buying some shares, an index fund or something, something that's easy to understand and do. Or you give yourself a goal like, okay, I'm going to have a property in 5 years. So I'm going to have to do the numbers. I need 100,000, 20,000, whatever it is for my deposit. I need to make sure my finances in order so I can get a home loan, etc., etc. But just give yourself that goal and just go for it.
Thank you very much, Nora. Nora is a friend of mine, and she was also one of my guests, amazing guests on Monday Talks.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go. The question is, what are these little stones? I think you touched this answer while we were speaking, but it's good to highlight more information.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the little stones are, number one, the decisions, small habit changes. If this is assuming you've never done anything before. You just take your salary, your income, you spend it. You only save for short-term things like, I need money to go on vacation next month, so I can't spend as much. If you just take that same decision-making process, but you stretch it out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you just get going, and that takes small stones. And sometimes, as I said, you may need to look at yourself quite honestly and say, well, okay, do I need to be coached on this? Do I need to go and read some books? Do I need some help with this? Because we've got to be honest with ourselves. A lot of investment success, from what I've seen, especially with the very wealthy people, the big players, it's all their habits, it's their mindset. A lot of it is. Of course, there's some luck as well. You come in the right time, in the right industry and all that, but they've got a certain mindset, and it's often a long-term mindset as well. It's not a short-term one.
Love the question, Nora. Thank you. Really. Here's one. Is it always about saving, or sometimes people just play it smart or not smart? I don't know. They just hit themselves with a big commitment and have these bank loans to buy that property and invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to these people? How do you calculate or say, yeah, this can be successful if what?
Yeah. So we're talking about using borrowing money to make more money. We call that leveraging usually. That's a really common way to grow wealth. If it's done correctly, like everything in life, you've got to be careful. First of all, you don't want to be borrowing more than you can afford to pay back. That's a very big thing. You've got to make sure whatever you are investing that money into is a solid investment that's going to generate returns to pay off the loan and make sure you're not getting into any issues. And this is a very common way of doing things. A lot of people who have, they've got a bit of money put aside, maybe they get good bonuses from work or they inherited something. And often we say, well, let's look at things like property, because you can borrow against property. And then your tenant moves into the property, if it's a constructed property, and they're paying your debt off for you. So of course
Yeah.
that's almost like free money. But that has to be looked at very carefully. Number one, if you're looking at property, you've got to look at data. Don't look at what everyone else is doing, which is really difficult because we are social creations. We're social animals, as they say, and so everyone else is buying here, we must buy here. I would do it on a data-driven basis. That's how I recommend property to clients, sometimes in different countries around the world. And we look at things like, long-term growth in the market. There's got to be a lot of prospects, construction quality, strong laws to protect you as an owner. And then you just do the numbers, just do the calculation. We've got spreadsheets for that. We can go through, if I borrow this much and I'm paying this much interest, will my tenant cover that? Will it match it, or will it be under? And all that sort of thing. So it works very well. People become very wealthy that way. But you just have to be sensible. You have to be sensible with it.
Right side is here just asking the same question about the getting loans and investment, and it's defining it. It's forbidden in our religion, and it's called riba.
Yeah.
So we gotta think of more of, because you cannot commit to pay profits and the loan, and at the same time pay the installments and all that stuff. It's really hectic. So what's the escape there? It's like we are putting ourselves in a critical situation that it's not easy to get out of. I mean, instead of me controlling my savings or my spending, I'm committing myself to pay extra money, which is haram in our religion. But also, the calculation is very difficult, complex one. If I borrow for 100,000 and I want to pay it back when 150, for example, and the asset or the property I want to buy and invest in maybe will be starting to require maintenance after finishing the installment years of this loan, right? So there is a lot of complexity here.
There's a lot. Yeah, that's true.
So how can you get this sorted out?
It's complex. The property can be very complex. It's one of the reasons why when we recommend property, we tend to have developers in different countries. First of all, we look at the market, because if the market's not solid with long-term potential, it's a risk. It might look good right now. It might be growing really quickly, but like you said, what about when you 10 years from now, maintenance and these things start to come up? What then? So you've got to look at that, but you also have to look at affordability, and that comes down to projecting. Unfortunately, a lot of people get caught in property because interest rates in most countries go up and down. You can't fix them. In some countries you can, but in others you can't. And so they vary. Like in the UK, it's quite common for people to fix for only sort of 4 or 5 years, and then they change it again, and they're getting a different rate. And if the central bank decides to change the rates, then maybe you've got to pay more, and then you've got to pay less. So how do you you've got to budget for that? And a lot of people don't budget for that. It happens if anyone sort of our age and older will have seen this happen. It happened in America with the 2008 subprime crisis. That was driven by money was cheap. It was cheap to borrow. They were giving it away. It was very cheap. It was like 1%, 2%, whatever it may be. So everyone could suddenly afford to buy a second property, a third property, whatever it was. But then, of course, the economic conditions are always changing, because economies are based on people and decisions around the world, and things change. And suddenly the rates of borrowing go up, and suddenly your bank is telling you, oh, that $500 you're paying every month is now $700. It's now $1,000. It's now $1,500. And because they had no, what I call a buffer, they couldn't budget for that, and they were having to either sell the property at a price that maybe wasn't favorable for them, but they had to get rid of it quickly, or in many cases the bank repossessed it, and that caused huge problems. And unfortunately, this is something that I've seen a few times go around in cycles. People are very keen to, when money is cheap, and we're coming into another cycle potentially where interest rates are going down. It'll be cheap to borrow again. And they're borrowing right at the limit. So if I've got a budget of $1,000, I borrow $1,000 because it's it's cheap to do that. And instead, you should be saying, no, I'm going to borrow 700 or 500, and I'm going to save the rest and invest it somewhere else, because I know one day in the future the rates will change, and if they do, I can budget for that. And then you also look for properties where you can find someone to manage it for you, because it's much easier. Unless your business is buying and selling property and you just do that, it's much easier to say, I'm going to give a property manager 5%, 10% of the rental income, and they will do all that for me. They will do the maintenance, they will do and then of course get your insurance, get all that, and do all that. But as I said, unfortunately, when money becomes cheap to borrow, there's this big stampede, everyone rushing to borrow money, and they'll borrow right up to their limits. So if their budget allows them to borrow 1,000, 2,000, that's what they borrow. And then of course it changes, it always does. I think with the financing you were talking about, is Islamic financing. It's another methodology entirely, but I think you can also work on the similar principle of that. But I'm not an expert on that. We do have people in the team and the network who do that, and we have investments specifically for that as well. But that's not my particular area of expertise. If a client asks me about that, I would normally bring in the expert to the meeting so that they can run through that. Okay. But it's the same principle. It's you don't borrow more than you can afford. That's as simple as that. And you also account for the fact that the world's always changing, and you have to budget for that too. We call it preparing for the unexpected.
And this is Raisali, because the name is not showing. She's thanking you. Okay, let's talk to beginners. Okay, we talked about elder people above 40 and how tough it is. Okay, now I'm a beginner. Let's say started my life, and I'd love to plan it. Put a plan and make my retirement as early as possible, not just like normal people just waiting for the retirement after 60. No, I want it to happen at 50, right?
Okay, yeah.
So what strategies can I do, or what's your advice?
Well, if you're young, so you're in your 20s, then you've got some big advantages. First of all, you've got lots more energy than we have, a lot more. So you can work much long. You can work longer hours. You can also learn much quicker. I mean, we were talking about this before we started the stream about in the company I'm with now. There's a lot of learning, and I love learning, but I've noticed it takes me longer now to digest the information than it did when I was 25. So when you're that age, in the 20s, it's a wonderful time. It's really great because you can make mistakes and you can bounce back from them as well. You've got time. You can take more risk. If you make investments and they don't work out, well, that's okay. You're in your 20s. You just do it again. You try. You learn from the mistake and carry on. But I think when you're that age, it's also very difficult because you're full of all these wonderful hormones and energy, and your tendency is to want to enjoy life quite a lot. And, in some cases, people go to parties a lot and they spend late nights and everything. So if you're able to get a little bit more discipline when you're that age, that will help you a lot. Whatever you actually decide to do, whether you're going to build a business and that's going to be your retirement vehicle, like an entrepreneur or something, or if you're just going to save money every month into the stock markets, because over 20, 30 years you can make a lot of money if you just keep doing that, or you do something else entirely. Whatever it is, try to be more disciplined, which is hard, because if I was talking to myself at 25, I wouldn't listen to that advice at all. I would say, yeah, whatever, because at that age, we all think we're going to live forever. We're all young, we're all strong, everything is great. Life is, it's easier. We don't have the responsibility usually. Once you get married, you have children, it's very different. But I think, focus on discipline, focus on good habits. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to become like a monk and save 50% of your income and all that. But just take time to say, I'm going to be disciplined, I'm going to learn, and when I make mistakes, I'm going to learn from those mistakes. That's the big one. And if you do that, things will tend to work out okay. And then of course you can do the same exercise. Okay, when I'm 50, I want to retire on X amount of money. and you can do the times by 20 rule, or you can, there's all these calculators online. You can work it out in more detail, and you can actually do the academic part, which I personally think is less interesting than the human side of it. And the academic part is just the vehicle that gets you there, and then you just go for it. That's all it is. It's really unfortunate that most education systems don't teach children basic responsibility we're conditioned in a certain way. I think education systems were developed from a time when most people would get a job for life, and they would maybe work in a factory or as a clerk or something like that. And we still have that mindset. You've got to go to school, then you go and get to college, you get your degree, then you go and find a job. But the world, of course, has changed. It's moved on from that. But we've got so many more options now. It's amazing. The young people today have got far more opportunity to save money, to put money in different places, to buy different things that would have been very hard to buy in a long time ago. I mean, buying shares in different countries you can go on your phone and do that now. It's amazing.
I agree with you that the education, the schools are just like preparing people to be employees forever. Not to mention the old people, the parents, and our traditions. Like, you gotta be a doctor, you gotta be an engineer, and to be protected, you have to be a government employee. These things they planted in the back of our heads when we are just still in the very first years in the school, and that's so sad. I don't know why they don't educate us to be businessmen. We discovered this by learning, by experience.
By trial and error almost.
But we see successful people doing it, and we try to copy, and it works. Why it's not there in our lives since we are in a very young age?
Well, I think even if you do want to go on that path of a profession, a good job, maybe a government job, and all of that, which actually would mean that you should have pretty stable income, and you might have the benefit of some sort of a nice pension as well. There's absolutely no reason why you can't still put some money aside, do some investments, even if you're happy just to do that and retire at 60. And a lot of people are, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as well. But you can still apply the same lessons of that kind of business mindset, that proper investment psychology, and say, well, okay, I've got a good job. I would say most of my clients are people who are professionals. They're not entrepreneurs. There's a lot there are, but most of them are working regular jobs and saving, and they've got a career and a pension and everything. And it's more about how do we just make sure that that's protected, number one. And also how do we build something up on the side of that that's separate of that? So that, even if that foundation gets weaker, you've got another one. It's diversification, eggs in different baskets. To have your own private pension, build a real estate portfolio on the side over the next 10 years to complement that. Most people can do that if you're in those professions. So maybe we should go easy on our parents as well, saying go and be a doctor. Because
No.
It's good advice as well. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. I mean, to build a business is, wow, the skills you need for that. And you've got to be really, really resilient too, because everyone every entrepreneur I know faces so many setbacks, so many disappointments, sleepless nights, hardships, crying, the whole thing. And for some of us, we don't want to do that, and that's okay too. But you still have to have that mindset of, I have to invest, I have to save, I've got a plan for the future, and of course live life as well. It's a balance. It's not just about putting away a fixed number every month. But one thing I always say is that every day that you invest is a day in the future that you don't need money. So whether you work as an entrepreneur or you work in your government job, or you a pension, whatever, there's nothing stopping you investing. There's nothing except you.
But I'm still also returning back to the point. Like I see old age, really old, like above 60, above 70 sometimes. Now it's time to have fun and go to travel the world. And I see like couples in a boat, they cannot bear to wait for the trip of the boat to end, and they sleep over on the boat because they're tired.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
their
Your energy
body
level's
cannot
lower.
afford
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
For most people, yeah.
they spend
Especially as
their
most
whole
of us
life.
we don't
Yeah,
exercise a lot, we don't eat well, so you get older and your body starts
yeah.
to feel it.
No
Yeah,
matter what you do, you're getting
yeah,
old. You're
mm,
getting old. I mean, okay, if you're not really very healthy habits in your life, after
mm.
70, you will start to face those challenges of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
stairs, walking
yeah,
long distance, all
yeah,
that stuff that you
mhm,
have to do to enjoy your trip around the world.
yeah,
So there is another theory that's like enjoy life
mhm,
because who never you'll never know. Maybe
yeah, yeah,
you will discover disease or
mm,
something serious in your life or
mm,
some serious thing that will take all your attention.
mm.
But at least you had some fun, or let's say you build memories with your kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Instead of just
mm,
very strict plan and
mm,
yeah, we have to save this and it's not for us. And
mm,
actually, some people say, yeah, if you're saving, you're not. This money is not yours. I
mm.
mean, sometimes you're saving it, and the second day you die. I mean, uh,
Well, yeah,
you're
that's
guarding the money.
it's I think it's always a balance. You have to really be you have to think about living for the day, but also you should plan for tomorrow. I think if you get that mix in life correct, there's nothing stopping you from taking a nice vacation, from spending quality time with family, with friends, and also saving a little bit of money or buying some insurance to protect you should you get old. One big thing that a lot of people speak to me about is when I get old, when I die, because it's going to happen to all of us. It's a guaranteed thing at the end of the journey.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
happens to my children? What happens to my family? How do I make sure that they don't go through the same things I've been through? How can I make their life a bit easier? And there's different plans you can make for that, and you don't have to save half your salary and all this. You can still enjoy your life, and I think it's just about balance. I think you can get extremes. You can get this kind of living like a monk, where you save everything and you don't even have a latte when you go to the coffee
yeah.
shop or
Oh,
anything,
yeah,
and you never do anything. And then you've got the other extreme, which is the money comes in and you spend it all the next day. And I think ideally you want to get a balance of both.
yeah. I
Ideally, for
agree with
most of
you.
us, that's what we want to do. Yeah. But I
So
think
here
there's an
comes.
incentive to invest as well, because if you want to enjoy life, then wise investments will help you to enjoy life, because eventually you'll start receiving an income from those investments. And if you can do that sooner, that means you can start enjoying that sooner rather than when you're old. But
Yeah,
also, you mentioned about health and things. It's a good analogy, because if we don't look after our bodies, we don't try to eat reasonably sensibly, if we don't take some exercise, then we're going to face problems later on the line that maybe we could avoid. And that's the same sort of thing with investing. You're really just trying to solve a future problem.
mm-hmm. Get the tools. Like at least be prepared
Yeah, you're just
mentally
preparing
and
yourself for the future. Yeah,
mentally,
that's right.
physically, everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And here comes our mutual, very close friend.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, Alex.
Hey,
Uh,
Alex, how's it going?
Great. So, hi, Daniel, Norman. Glad to see you both. Norman, how do you assess risk and determine your client's risk tolerance? Interesting question.
That's a good one. There are questionnaires you can fill out which kind of give me a broad idea, whether someone is low risk, balanced risk, high risk. But I also have to apply common sense to those questionnaires, even the most detailed ones that we use in the industry, because we also have to look at time as well, and also where someone is right now. So if somebody has just started saving money, they've never invested before, but their risk tolerance is high risk, we're still not going to look only at high risk investments. We're probably going to go more medium risk, and maybe divide some of the money up into high, medium, and low as well, and balance it out accordingly. Everyone's different, and you've got to think of that. You think of their age, how long they've got left, their previous experience. There's a lot of factors, but the basic one starts with a risk profile questionnaire, and just a good conversation where I get to know them, because that's really it. Getting to know the person gives me a very clear idea of, okay, they don't like property, or they do love property, or they hate shares, or they want to buy art and nothing else, or they only want to invest in London, or only in Dubai, and then I have to start building a picture according to that. And sometimes I have to tell them, you've got to look elsewhere as well. You've got to broaden your horizons, but at the same time, I have to try and fit things into that.
Well, thank you, Alex. And guys, we have 5 minutes left, so even less. So shoot the questions, and meanwhile, we'll ask Norman for what's the golden nugget out of this, because I need to give you time, relax to get it out. So, what do you advise any person that is really interested into, yeah, I can afford, or is it like practical thing, or is it like too idle for me? I mean, I barely can live with my income.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice we give to these people?
And it's a broad range of people. I think anyone, it starts with the psychology. Everything in we are emotional, psychological beings. We're not robots or machines. So it all starts with that. You've got to understand your own psychology, where you're coming from. Maybe look at your own biases, your own preferences, things like that. And that sometimes can mean a bit of coaching, a bit of help, getting a mentor sometimes. Sometimes I do that with clients. It's a mentoring journey. It's just one step then another and another to do that. That's probably more important than anything else, I'd say, because if your investment psychology is in the right kind of direction, you're going to make better decisions. It's like your operating software. If that's working well, then it will execute commands properly, or at least reasonably well. Maybe with Windows it doesn't. I don't know. I'm not in the IT, but it will do it. And so you've got to look at your operating system and make sure that it's working well, and that it's going to serve you. Because if it's not serving you, there's no point. Because money really is just a tool. That's all it is. It just gives you options. And ideally in life, you want as many options as possible, but you also have to be realistic as well. So yeah, psychology is the big one, I'd say.
So we don't work for money.
Yeah.
And we need to have money working for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Something...
I mean, that's the key difference. I mean, it's almost a cliche, but it's so true. Wealthy people make their money work for them. That's what they do. They almost all of them. The ones who stay wealthy.
It's not just a saying, right? It's not just a saying.
It's true. I see it all the time. I meet people all the time, and they've got this investment, that investment. It produces income. They reinvest that income somewhere else. Every year they build up some money. They do something else with it. They're not necessarily spending it all on sports cars and things and all of that. Although the ones who make a lot of money can afford to do that. But you'd be surprised how many actually can't really afford those things. They just save money and buy the thing. The really smart ones have investments that pay for those luxuries. So the profits are paying for the sports cars and the nice houses and that, rather than the actual cash and the asset itself.
We love your knowledge sharing, and me and Norman here today tried to give you some vision. It's your choice after all. Absolutely. To decide about your future, and there is no one solution that serves everybody. It's a customized based on your psychology, based on your needs, based on your goals. What's your dream, or what's your Everest, as per my friend was saying.
Yeah.
So this session was only to give you just like heads up. You can do it, and remember, it's within reach if you plan it well. If you need help, we are lucky. We have experts like Norman who can just like sit with you, listen, guide you, and give you advices. If this not working, let's do this one, and if not working, let's do another one. So I love this session very well. It was fun, and it was a lot of knowledge sharing and a wisdom. A lot of wisdom was there, and practical stories. I would love to, in your name and my name, thank again my guest, Norman, and thank you, Raisa Ali, for being very active with us. And really, really appreciate those kind of support that comes with me every time with a new guest. So thank you very much again, Norman, and
Thank you,
for
Daniel.
you,
Thank you,
our
everyone.
audience. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and take control of your financial future. Yes, you can. So goodbye for now.